Unless you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. And now here's your host, Rich Barris.
Thank you, my good friend Don Smith, who will join me in the next hour. All right, welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. You can still follow me on Twitter at Peoples_Pundit and on the Twitter getter at People's Pundit. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead, give it a like. If you like the videos, definitely subscribe and hit the notification bell. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. But of course, we would very much like you to sign up on Rumble instead. People's Pundit Rumble channel, where when you will see there's below and above right over here, the locals. Where's the best place to follow me? peoplespundit.locals.com. Join the revolution in data journalism. It's Freewheeling Friday. Get your questions in. Laura is going to be on hopping shortly to grab them and send them over to us.
I will.
And Dom will be joining me to help answer them. In the first half, we have some polls and primaries to discuss and pollsters to discuss. All right. And with that, though, before we get into all of that, I do want to make some remark on Joe Biden's speech last night. One thing that drives me completely insane is, where's the Washington Post tracker for Joe Biden's lies? All right. Or honestly, if somebody like, let's say, Donald Trump, definitely George Bush, because we saw what they did during George Bush. If it was somebody like them, you would have had the incoherent tracker up, and you would have been listening to Joe Biden talk about baby formula a little differently if they had the same standards that they do across the board, but they don't. Where's the Glenn Kessler fact check at the Washington Post for the myriad lies that we heard in this speech? And not only that, frankly, while we're bringing up the Washington Post, I have not made the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial a central thing in this show, even though I know it's captivated the nation. I think what we can take from that trial the most, if anything, and how it's relevant to this show, is that the ACLU is not a civil rights organization, and the Washington Post is complete garbage. There is nothing journalistic about the Washington Post anymore. Democracy dies when fake civil rights organizations take money from people because they're posing as a civil rights organization when they're in fact not, and they're turning to garbage news outlets or garbage smear merchants pretending to be news outlets and giving that money to them to plant stories that appear to be op-eds that are false. If anything, you take anything from the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, never forget the role that the ACLU and the Washington Post played in pushing the lies that are very much on the liberal, woke, progressive narrative spectrum. That Johnny Depp is some kind of big bad man who abused poor Amber Heard. Me too, me too, me too. Toxic masculinity. Johnny Depp, by the way, who may act like it in some movies, but certainly doesn't appear to be in real life. By all accounts, sadly, he appears to be a man who is struggling badly with mental health illness and addiction. And I pray and hope he gets support and help that he needs, because suffering from addiction is no joke. As you guys know, it's a big deal to me. Personal experience. I hope Johnny Depp gets help that he needs. But what he did not deserve was a smear by his garbage ex-wife. Who the hell even knows who this woman was? Did you know who Amber Heard was before this trial? I did not. The ACLU wrote that for her. They then gave money to the Washington Post to plant it as an op-ed, as a legitimate op-ed. That's not news organizations are supposed to do, folks. They can take out a full-page ad if they want to do, sell their brand or their product or their idea, or their story, or obviously their fake accusations. The Washington Post should not be taking op-eds from blatantly partisan organizations. The ACLU is not worthy of the people who came before them and started that organization, which was admirable. Where were they during the Russia collusion hoax? Where were they? This is unreal to hear that the largest newspaper in the DC area was taking hit pieces for payment on a private citizen. I mean, it's bad enough if it was public. Don't get me wrong. If it was like a public figure. I mean, he's still a private citizen. He's a celebrity. He's entitled to everything else the rest of us are. It's not like he's in the public square. The Washington Post. It's a disgrace. Now you know, by the way, how and why it was so easy for Hillary Clinton and her campaign to launder a fake story that Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump somehow colluded to steal the 2016 election. And then they can pretend as if they didn't know where the funding came from. If it wasn't for this trial, you never would have knew about it. But the bottom line is, this is why you have people with such low character like this. This is why you cannot forget about fair treatment. Even in appearance that they're trying to treat both sides fairly. They're not. I mean, we're well beyond that now. But I want you to listen to this from Joe Biden because, number one, it's a blatant lie. Number two, there's an underlying story. And number three, it's something that would have catastrophic consequences. So let me just play it and we'll talk about it.
We should repeal the liability shield that often protects gun manufacturers from being sued for the death and destruction caused by their weapons. They're the only industry in this country that has that kind of immunity.
Okay, first and foremost, that is demonstrably false. They are not the only company or industry in this country that has that kind of immunity. By the way, they had no problem with Disney having an autonomous status. But that's great, Joe. Now do Pfizer. Now do Big Pharma. It's not true. And number two, this is something Democrats and other anti-gun lobby people have long done, have long advocated for through civil trials, criminal, thank the Lord it has never worked. Instead of having the courage, Lord would be proud of me, instead of having the courage to just say what they really want to say and state the position that they really hold, which is that they don't believe in the Second Amendment. They want to nullify it completely because they don't have the courage to say they want to repeal it and to just go on a full offense. Because if that happened, if gun manufacturers were held responsible for weapons that they manufactured that were used in tragic mass shooting events, then gun manufacturers would go out of business. Some would even cease to be in business intentionally. It would have tragic consequences on the law-abiding private citizen, let alone forget about not just the gun enthusiast or the Second Amendment supporter. Like myself, I have guns. Oh my God, kill me. The Peebles family only survived their encounter with a madman who kidnapped them because Dan got out of the car and put 3 in the guy's chest, faking that he had to take a leak with a .22 caliber revolver that his wife kept in the side door area of the driver's side. They were hijacked by a murderer who was on the run. And after 6 hours worth of driving, and it became because he wanted to drive them over the Texas border, the southern border. And afterwards, he would have shot them both in the head and left them to die. The only reason and he's a doctor, by the way, the only reason he was able to save his own life and his wife's life is because he had that firearm. If somebody was to use, well, let's say a SIG, in the same way, which they do all the time, and you never hear about it. But then 2 months later, some maniac listening to the media, by the way, they're the ones killing people. Some maniac would use, I don't know, because SIG makes their own version of the AR-15, which doesn't stand for assault rifle, you stupid idiots. It stands for armor light. Like mine is an M10 because it's manufactured by another company. Or an M4, whatever you want to call it, you know? If somebody else used the SIG's version of it and they were held criminally responsible for it, then Mr. Peebles wouldn't have had that. He would not have had that firearm to be able to defend himself, and him and his wife would have been dead in a ditch just outside the southern border with Mexico, just outside of Texas, over the border with Mexico. It would bankrupt an entire industry, and it would, in effect, indirectly, take your Second Amendment rights away from you. They have long been arguing since the 90s, even before, but definitely made a big play for it in the 90s, where I'm from in the country, which, you know what, I'm sorry to say, thank God I don't live in anymore. They tried this multiple times. And some juries could be persuaded by a grieving father who lost his son. The ads, very similar to the ads that you're seeing on YouTube. If you click on a YouTube video over the last 7 days, they can be swayed by it. A jury can be persuaded. But in an actual court of law, a criminal court of law, they have not been able to do it. And thank God. In some cases, judges have actually overturned jury verdicts. Because it's not based on law. It's not based on facts. It's not based on evidence. It's based on emotions. And the judge said, you cannot rule on your emotions. And as sad as I feel for that father, the fact is, sir, what you're calling for, the policies in that petition that you're asking people to sign on your YouTube ads and everywhere else would not have prevented your son from being killed. I am a father of 3, and I can't even imagine the pain. It must be unbearable. Unbearable. But it would not have saved your son. So we have to look at this using our God-given reason, which is what our founding fathers used when they enshrine these rights for us. Thomas Jefferson said, no man has a right that it doesn't have an equal or greater duty that comes along with it. What does that mean? You have the right to defend yourself, but you have the duty not to be ignorant to the things you're going to use to defend yourself. You have a duty to understand why we gave you this right. Hillary Clinton, nobody needs an AR-15. What the hell do you know? Then the bodyguards don't need them, Hillary. She has no idea. The fact is, the biggest problem in this country when it comes to the gun debate is that the anti-gun side doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. They don't know. I'm saying that not just as a public opinion guy, but, even anecdotally. I know many people like me from the North. And in my instance, joining the military, then moving to the South, I know many people like me that didn't know anything about guns outside of turn that puppy sideways and spray a few in the air to defend yourself. I know a bunch of them who have later become gun enthusiasts and learned about the Second Amendment and learned about firearms and now are strident defenders of it. I know nobody who was raised in gun culture that has turned anti-gun. Because one side is extremely ignorant and the other side is not. It really is that simple. One side is responsible, the other side is not. One side wants you to rely on a system that has failed you repeatedly in preventing these shootings and protecting you from crime, from the criminal element in society. And the other side wants you to have your ability to defend your damn self. And it's not just the criminal element in society, although often these two overlap. It's the government. The Second Amendment is for you to protect yourself against tyranny. And if you say, well, they have this, they have that, how could you do? Well, first of all, you know nothing about asymmetrical warfare, making stupid comments like that. Number two, my answer is, why don't we have them? People with means had cannons. If our society wasn't sick, and it is, then what we were allowed to have wouldn't matter. It straight wouldn't matter. An animate object is not causing the human brain to carry out such acts of depravity against one another. Sick that is taking hold in our society, the culture of victimhood and lack of personal responsibility and hatred towards their fellow man. And like Don Smith, who will join us later, said last week, this hopelessness that stole everybody's souls to replace religion and morality and everything else that's supposed to lay in your heart. That is driving it. And until we address that, none of this will even matter. None of it will matter. And by the way, there is only downside for Republicans to cave to people like Adam Kinzinger, who makes zero sense, ladies and gentlemen. Again, use logic. Use your God-given reason. He's arguing his drinking age is 21. We should be more like Europe. The drinking age is 21, and purchasing a handgun age is 21, so we should make it that way for AR-15s. The drinking age is 21 in the United States and also places like Cambodia, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Bahrain. Europe's drinking age is 18 and below in some areas. It makes no sense. How about addressing the reason why we are not raising adult young men and adult young women to be responsible enough at the age of 18 to have a drink? How is it it's perfectly okay to send somebody to go get their face blown off at the age of 18, but they're not allowed to have their Second Amendment rights? The age of 18, the age of 21, these are arbitrary distinctions. They can help us understand the maturity level, but they don't address it. They do not address it. So, again, I feel bad for some, I do, of course, for some of these parents we're seeing, but the fact of the matter is, sir, that would not have saved your child's life. And worse, before Pulse nightclub, the largest mass killing event in this country, especially, it was at a school, in fact. But it had the perpetrator didn't even use a gun. He used explosive devices. You want to take away an AR-15 and then have these psychopath kids that we're just like leaving to fall through the cracks of society learn how to build bombs with ammonium nitrate? Freaking fertilizer? Imagine the damage that could be done. It was the worst until Pulse. All right, so with that in mind, again, with 10 minutes before the end of the first segment here, there is only downside to fall. If you fall for this emotion argument, if you fall for this pushing of narrative, 95%. Look, there is always a temporary bump in support for gun control laws after these mass shooting events, always. It then fades within weeks. If you ask, what do you prefer? Which do you think would even be more effective? Overwhelmingly, security health and mental health measures go a lot farther than stricter gun control laws. Even, by the way, red flag laws. Security. Until we can address this sickness, this disease that is in our culture. By the way, a disease that first presented itself in our culture in the counterculture era in the 1960s, 1966 to be precise. And the reason we have all of these mass shooting events, as you might know from my Twitter feed and from everywhere else that I've been saying it, and even on this show earlier in the week and last week, the media is causing these shootings. They are a contagion. It's called a contagion. Everyone is trying to one-up each other. It used to be referred to as the Columbine effect. As soon as Buffalo happened, I went on my high horse about it because I knew they were going to cause another one, and they did. In Uvalde. They kept going even harder. They went even harder, and there were more mass shootings. People that are sick enough to carry out acts like this are pursuing a need to fill their hopelessness, their need for notoriety. And again, all of these media outlets know it, and they don't give a damn. Those who are responsible for the temporary bump in support for gun laws during these periods will never vote on gun laws. They're not going to vote on gun control. In truth, strident gun control supporters and voters who are eligible to vote are a lot like abortion voters. Supporters of unfettered abortion, I should say, not just abortion voters. Because a lot of abortion voters are pro-life. They're a lot like those who support unfettered abortion that the media is telling you Roe v. Wade will somehow juice up and change the electorate for them. That is not true. That is not the case. Those who are responsible for that temporary bump will vote on cost of living. They will vote on the economy. They will vote on something that is directly impacting to them as a major issue. They will not vote on guns. It's not an issue that is important to them. Those who will vote for stricter gun control laws are going to be in the electorate anyway. However, Second Amendment supporters vote. And if you screw them, they have no problem, as we showed the president during the last president when he was contemplating red flag laws and other policies beyond the bump stock, as we laid out in great detail. You will screw these voters and they will screw you right back. There is no downside to protecting the Second Amendment politically. There isn't. Or as a matter of public safety, by the way. There's not. There is all the downside risk that you will depress your base if you betray them. And believe you me, in the battleground states, they are disproportionate. There are also a lot of these voters that are responsible for crossover votes. It is actually the complete opposite of what Democrats and the media have argued. When they go on their crazy anti-Second Amendment tangents, they lose some of the remaining bases in states that have, like Michigan, even Colorado, by the way. That was a great case study. Ohio, Iowa, definitely Florida, and on and on and on and on. All right, so it would be incredibly stupid. Now, I will say this, and I'm no fan of Mitch McConnell. He was very clearly baiting the Democratic Party. He is not, when it comes to maneuvering, Mitch McConnell is not stupid. When it comes to making sausage, he's not stupid. He's dumb when it comes to reading the electorate. He's dumb when it comes to long-term planning of the country and seeing the impact of what he's doing. He's stupid and he's tone deaf when it comes to that kind of stuff. But when it comes to his business, which is sausage making, he's smart. He's shrewd. And he knew, let's talk about gun control. And what he knew he meant was security and maybe even red flags, but maybe not. Because he knows how much that really pushes some Second Amendment people don't necessarily like red flag laws because, there are veterans who have suffered from some problems and they would take away your gun rights. And some schmuck on Twitter said, well, you want a veteran with PTSD to have a gun? Just because he has PTSD does not mean he's dangerous. Or she, for that matter. Because he served your country and somehow he's bothered by the sight of human death or his friend's brains being in his lap makes him every bit human. And according to that, the laws of nature and nature's God, they deserve their gun rights. If they present to be dangerous to themselves or someone else at some point, then that could be another story. But that's not what they're talking about here. And then Mitch McConnell knew that they would come way to the left once he opened that door. And they did. And I don't know if you heard him yesterday, but he said, oh, I was always talking about security. He did that crap on purpose. Believe me. He did it for Herschel Walker. He did it for whoever is the nominee in Nevada, although we know, Nevada, I don't know. He did it for other Senate races around the country. I doubt strongly that even he would ever cave. All right, so don't, I hate to say it, but, you just got to hold firm when this emotional crap gets lobbed at you because it's not legitimate. I mean, Adam Kinzinger, I've totally abused him on Twitter. He makes no sense. The guy is a total fraud. I honestly don't even know how he sleeps at. He obviously was never what he ever claimed to be because nobody has a conversion like this because you didn't like a former president, folks. Because you hated Donald Trump does not make you change your views on abortion, on gun rights, on government spending. Really, there are principled positions on each side of the aisle, or at least, well, there definitely isn't the right. The left seems to change their mind whenever it fits the needs of the state. There are principled positions. You don't change those principled positions because you have a disagreement with a former president you don't like. No, Donald Trump just exposed you. You are a fraud. You always were a fraud. Just like Bill Kristol was never a conservative. Rick Wilson was never a conservative. They have always been, they are the liars. And they are the ones who have always been lying to the electorate. He ran the campaign that won. The latter ran the campaign of the Republican nominee for the presidency in 2008. John McCain won the primary by his message and by somehow convincing people that he was bona fide conservative. Point is, they were always full of crap. Max Boot was never a conservative. None of these people, Joe Scarborough was never conservative. These guys were always frauds. They're just out of the closet now. All right. And then this ties really into polling, all right, which I will make brief comments about before I get into something else because it dovetails off of this. There was some back and forth yesterday over it started with the national poll, and then others having their national poll out. We'll go over it basically. And by the way, if you do hear some stuff, we're beefing up security. So if you hear some rummaging around, just try to ignore it. All right. So basically, there was this conversation on social media that got kickstarted over it. We will, and you'll see, we clearly have Donald Trump with a much bigger lead than some of these other pollsters, and we're not D+9. All right, that's just not the case, and it will never be because that's not reality. I don't have a crappy online panel that I'm constantly tapping. That is what's causing the D+9. It's not even a matter of response bias. Their panel is garbage. Their panel is crap. It's a consumer panel, and they're not using rigorous enough screens to make it a voter panel. All right. So, in any event, I really want to read something somebody had said and then address it because I think this is important when you take polling. When you look at polling and you take it with a certain point of view. All right. So it is a tweet with somebody giving me a credit. All right. And it's in response to somebody else that was in this conversation. Okay. And basically, Realignment Politics said the only pollster I trust is People's Pundit. He's been so uncannily accurate, even with the Kemp race. That was crazy. And in truth, we were. We had Purdue and all the rest of them right on the line. Kemp got the undecideds. It's just unusual for me anyway to see somebody get all those undecideds, but Georgia clearly presented as a typical incumbent election because you had Marjorie Taylor Greene romping it right in the same district that Kemp romped it. And Georgia is also, there's several factors which we've talked about ad nauseum. So I suppose it is plausible, although they clearly have had some problems. I don't know if you saw it in Senate District 1. There was a major problem in DeKalb County, and it literally swapped the leaders of the first and third ballot. The machine failed to count like 3,000 votes in this area. It's a major mistake. Take that with the AP report. You take it for what it is. But the bottom line is, and then Riding the Pine said, Rich the People's Pundit has absolutely been the best pollster the last 8 years or so. He does have he does have a conservative bias, but it doesn't affect his polling like the mainstream. Whether Democrat or Republican, you should check him out. I love comments like that, and I'm going to tell you why. Not because they praise me. Because I have long tried to argue this. Every pollster has a bias. Every pollster has a point of view. It is dishonest for the public to be given these results with the fake impression that somehow this pollster is nonpartisan or more impartial than another. Because number one, it's not true. And number two, in fact, as we have seen, the media favorite pollsters, their pollsters, the university pollsters, have been the most impartial. I mean, the least impartial, excuse me, out of all of us. And those of us who are independent or conservative pollsters, I kind of laughed out and mocked at every season, like Tucker Carlson said. This is the guy they ban. This is the guy they laugh at every year, yet he keeps whooping them. We are presented as somehow biased. The truth is, it was always dishonest for them to act as if pollsters are impartial people. They're not. They're human beings like you. I have my own views. The problem comes, and this is how I responded to him, and I'm just going to read it because I don't think I could say it here better than I can there, but I thanked him, and I said, all pollsters have their own views and biases. It's an insult to voters to pretend otherwise. The problems stem from allowing them, those biases and those views, to pervert the profession, whether you're doing it willingly or not. You have got to be on guard for whether or not you're allowing your own biases to somehow cloud your judgment, to somehow, is it disabling you from being able to see something that someone else would be able to see? It means a lot when people like this person and many others did as well. It means a lot when you guys point that out, because I am constantly trying to convey that to you. I'm a human being too. The difference is that I'm not insulting your intelligence, and the difference is that I am basically making a compact with you that my views, I will do everything possible to prevent them from perverting my work, my profession, the outcome. And that's the difference. You had pollsters like Nate Cohen at the New York Times who somehow couldn't see how badly his polling was in battleground states in 2020 and in 2018, frankly. Gillum +6, Nate Gillum +6. Fox News, Joe Donnelly +7. Claire McCaskill +3, then tied. It's because they are seeing the world how they want to see it. They are seeing it through their own eyes. They are unable to see the world, the choices you're asking these people to make when you're giving these interviews. They're unable to see it through their own eyes, through the other person's eyes, through their experiences, through their socioeconomic status, through their reality. They want to see it through their own. And I firmly believe that it's where I came from that allowed me to listen better than others, to hear voices that the others just don't hear, to believe the woman in Lansing who voted for Bernie Sanders, had no vote history, but said, I would not vote for Hillary Clinton. I will vote for Donald Trump for my first time voting because I am an anti-corporatist and Donald Trump understands how trade hurt my family, how immigration hurt my family, my husband's profession. Everybody else would have screened that woman out or not believed her. There are some people that just stick with you the entire time. And by the way, as Don will tell you, it's not like I was rooting for Donald Trump. In the primaries, far from it. All right. Once my own preferred guy took the walk, then obviously. And by the way, because he let George Will's wife destroy his campaign. So I will always tell you what I 100% believe to be true, which is where it brings me to this, with 12 minutes left to go. I am telling you that sometimes I see races that have such an enormous impact on the future of politics and political coalitions that I give them a lot of attention. And most people do not. That happened with Texas 15, Florida 27. Right, Laura? If you'd like to chime in. People constantly telling me they're too Hispanic. You'll never win them. Correct, Laura?
Correct, correct. Don't mind the Peppa Pig in the background.
Oh, yeah. Peppa Pig.
But yes, very right about the Hispanics. Yes.
And I want to read this article in its entirety because he nailed the significance of the race and the outcome of it to a T. So who I'm talking about, what I'm talking about is Steve Cortez. Obviously, nobody is more America first than someone like Steve Cortez. He saw the Trump appeal early. He's like a Wall Street guy who totally disagrees with most people on Wall Street. Or a finance guy, I should say. Who gets it. This is a guy who gets it. And he endorsed David Giglio in CA13, our boy David. And I want to read it because Republicans, I've been saying this for months now, are in an identity crisis. And they have got to figure out what it is they want to be. You will get a little bit of an increase with the Hispanic vote generically because Democrats are losing their damn minds. But you will lose it again if you are the party of establishment corporatist Republicans like Kevin McCarthy and his select candidate in this district, who, by the way, was running around before he got in the race, running around trying to recruit people to siphon votes away from David because in truth, they want the Democrat, Adam Gray. Here's the cold hard truth for you guys. Kevin McCarthy has to deal with the Democrat to vote for him as speaker if he wins. He doesn't give a damn whether John Duarte beats David or not because Duarte's not going to run a good race and he's going to get crushed by Hispanics. If I have to pull up the pictures of what this man did in the Clean Water Act violation, I will. But Republican primary voters are not the general electorate. People will see this not as the poor farmer, the big bad government came after. Oh no. He was ripping the ground where you're only allowed to dig 11 inches. He knew he was doing it. He did it anyway. He now hates Donald Trump because Donald Trump would not stop the Water Act violation, and he had to settle for $1.1 million in total fines and and there are permit things you got to do. It costs money. But all in all, it was 1.1 million. He was facing a $45 million fine, ladies and gentlemen. He killed an entire population of shrimp. And like, I know some Republicans, we're all like, you know, like I said, I never hide my views from you. I can't stand the EPA. It got way out of its mission from the Nixon era. And I actually think it was kind of necessary during the Nixon era. The cities were disgusting, but it has completely lost sight of its mission. That being said, this is not a case of, oh, the poor farmer. This is a case of, I'm rich and I think I can do whatever the hell I want. That's what this is a case of. And if it doesn't happen, if it doesn't work, whatever, I'll just give a couple $1,000s to Donald Trump and he'll get rid of it for me. That's what he wanted. And Trump's people did not. Now, man, you let me down. I gave that money and he let me down, man. By the way, the election was totally legitimate. Trump lost. That's the choice you have. But it's beyond that. If Republicans really don't want demographics to make them a minority party for the foreseeable future, they have got to win these Hispanic voters. They have got to. You can wind up seeing this whole thing of replacement theory blow up in the Democrats' faces because they spent 30 plus years trying to change the composition of the electorate, trying to change the nation, its very identity. And yet the most patriotic among us are working class Hispanics. They're not going to vote for any Republican, just any Republican. It's not going to happen. Like I told you, that's why I wanted to read that polling thing first. I have been polling this area for more than a year and a half, or more than a year, about a year and a half. I am the only pollster who knew that this area was going to vote to throw out Gavin Newsom, that it was going to vote overwhelmingly for Larry Elder. Everybody else, including the Rhinos pollster, told the Republican Party to pour money into Orange and San Diego County. I told them those counties are gone. I gave a speech to the Lincoln Club of Orange County a year and a half ago with my family sitting right there in front of all of the donors, all of the club members, and I told them the bad news they didn't want to hear. The truth of it is, your Defend Orange County strategy is a loser.
Amen. And I was there.
The best thing you could do now is turn your attention to the lower income areas with working class Hispanics who feel left behind and share your values. But the truth of it is, the McCarthy wing of the party does not really want to represent them. They have nothing in common with them, and they look down on them, much like they look down on Southern whites and working class whites in the Midwest and elsewhere. They think they're better than you. They think they're better than both of you. And they have no interest in really doing that. And you could see it, sadly, in the faces of many of them. It was tragic to watch. All right, so with that in mind, I want to read this because I am shocked that I have such a hard time explaining this. First of all, he's raised plenty of money. But money is not going to win these voters over. That's not what speaks to these voters. You need enough money to bring your message to them. But a typical corporatist shill is going to cost, this is an open seat. If the Democrat wins it, it'll be Democrat for a while, guys. That's what it comes down to. You're not going to get it back. Not unless somebody else like Donald Trump comes along and flips the map again. Do you want to constantly wait around for a cult of personality to help you and to pull you out of the depths? Not to mention, this dude would be among the worst dudes in Congress. It's really about whether it's a public servant or someone there to enrich himself. The Hispanics call this guy that freaking plantation owner. That freaking plantation owner. The SMS responses are unbelievable. He has no chance. I'm telling you, as the only guy who pulled the Central Valley correctly. I'm telling you, as, like those gentlemen said, the guy who really has done the best job in the last 8 years. This guy will lose. And you will lose. Because Adam Gray will represent that district. It's that simple. I want to read this though, because, and I'm going to put it on full screen, take a drink of water, because I hate reading long things with dry mouths. Steve gets the entirety of this. Nobody, David said on Twitter in response to the tweet, and few people understand America First like Steve Cortez. And then, just comes from conversations with the guy. You know it when you hear it. And he's 100% correct. And you can hear it in this article. Hold on. First of all, that's a fantastic picture that woman was expecting. She's adorbs. Right, Laura? Laura. But they were also lamenting incredible out-of-control crime. They were lamenting cost of living with the new baby on the way. They were lamenting housing prices, grocery prices, gas prices. In California's Central Valley, a potential political groundswell builds. The patriotic Hispanic citizens of this working-class area rally measurably to the America First vision of cultural conservatism combined with populist economic nationalism. By the way, yesterday his phone was ringing off the hook because he takes calls from voters himself. His phone was ringing off the hook asking him basically whether or not he fits right into the parameter of what Steve is saying here. It's cultural conservative, but economically populist and nationalist. But, which, by the way, the GOP donor candidate is not. He's not either. In fact, he's just on video with the Modesto Bee talking about how, basically he's pro-abortion. Not basically, he's pro-abortion. And then sends out 18,000 mailers claiming to be a conservative fighter. But for this transformation to solidify, the right brand of new Republicans must become standard bearers for the GOP and not the tired corporatists that have long dominated party leadership in California and many parts of America. I want to point out that Texas 15 Republican establishment candidates failed to carry over and over and over. This new district, they still would have lost it, while Trump would have carried it by 4 points. And it's going to take an America First candidate who is nominated, has the Trump endorsement, is America First, to win it. And she's going to win it. Looking at the national backdrop, President Donald Trump proved that prior GOP outreach to Hispanics lacked authenticity and rigor. Authenticity is the key word here. For decades, Conservative Inc. offered Hispanics a squish version of Democrat-like policies. By the way, Adam Gray is more pro-life than John Duarte is. Communicated with some awkward Spanish messaging. But Trump, the outsider, smashed that model and conveyed to Hispanic citizens a muscular agenda of American sovereignty, revitalized small business, and a socially conservative agenda that recognized the right to life and existence of two complementary sexes. And that's why David has the endorsement of every single right to life organization, by the way. Basically everyone that gets involved in the races out there. Lo and behold, Trump's trash, brass, and genuine approach succeeded massively among Latinos over time. For example, in America's most Hispanic county, Starr County, Texas, on the U.S.-Mexico border. And by the way, this district is mostly Mexican as well. Trump got clobbered by 60% in 2016. Then in 2020, he rallied an astounding 55% to nearly win this 96% Hispanic county. Next door, he did win Zapata County, rising 38% in only 4 years to victory in an 86% Latino county. Looking at the present, the focusing on California's Central Valley, the newly drawn congressional district, represents a solid chance for a big win for the patriotic populist movement. The majority Hispanic district lies just west of Fresno and includes parts of Fresno, Merced, and Madera counties. It's the kind of place where men wear cowboy hats, women drive pickup trucks, and families salute the American flag. Perhaps the most important evidence pointing to a GOP win in CA13 is the 2021 recall vote statewide. He lost, and you should click on this. By the way, Laura, send out this link. I'll put it in the YouTube one if you could. Send out this, or I'll put it in the locals one. Send out this link to everybody because I want them to read the data part of this more than what I'm going to blast over it. Okay. He lost the 13th district to Larry Elder. The independent, hardy citizens of the Central Valley never accepted Newsom's draconian and unscientific lockdown measures, nor did they appreciate his aloof San Francisco ethos. By the way, the district on paper was over 45% Democrat, but on the exit polls when asked, it was D+3. That's it. And we see it in polling. We hear it all the time. That many people don't even know they're Democrats. If they do, they are and are not voting Democrat. They just haven't changed their registration. But they're done with the Democratic Party. This guy was honestly. This has a funny story behind it. But it's a perfect example. Couldn't believe he was actually there walking around and wanted to show that he voted for him. Do your thing, yeah. Just do your thing. Just remember, Laura, more focus on security outside. All right. The independent hardy citizen had never accepted Newsom's draconian and unscientific lockdowns, nor did they appreciate his aloof San Francisco ethos. Hispanics of the Valley similarly scoffed at the disastrous performance of Newsom's ally in Washington, Joe Biden. Polling in CA13 from yours truly reveals that Biden's overall approval in the district is only 40%, with 56% disapproval. By the way, I watched that collapse over a year and a half. It was approval. I watched it collapse over a year and a half. And I will tell you this, the PPIC poll, which has long polled California, has now finally come out to back us up. The Central Valley overall is R+3, and Biden's approval was actually like 39 or something in their poll, or 37. It was lower than ours. Among Hispanics of the Central Valley, whom Biden carried 46 by 16% in 2020, the current approval is merely 45, with 49% Hispanic disapproval of Biden. It's worse in this latest polling this week. That implosion, losing 20% net in only a year and a half, reflects the broad aversion for Biden among working-class voters of all races and ethnicities, including Hispanics. But this backdrop will mean little if the California establishment GOP prevails. Their current favored candidate, endorsed by Kevin McCarthy, shows little ability to appeal to Central California Hispanics. Instead, the candidate catching fire in the Valley is David Gillia, an outsider, former school teacher and businessman. He has worked the district relentlessly. I mean, I don't know if I want to give numbers here, but it's ridiculous. Door knocks, like numbers I've never seen before. In this area, definitely not. Knocking on doors and listening to voters in ways no Republican has ever tried before in the area. They don't. Elizabeth Heng she didn't believe in face-to-face campaigning, the Republican establishment's candidate last time. She thought that she could win on Facebook and on TV. Gilio appeals with an authentic, unapologetic mix of social conservatism informed by deep Catholic faith, combined with an insistence on economic populism, which includes securing the border. Contrary to media narrative, Gilio recognizes that hardworking Hispanics do not want to compete in the workforce against unjust and unlawful illegal immigrant labor. In fact, a recent Trafalgar poll found that a stunning 65% of Hispanics favor closing down the border entirely because of the current teeming border crisis. And in fact, when the pandemic was raging with Delta, we asked a similar question in this district, or this area of this day. It wasn't finalized yet, but it was overwhelming. It was about 61% who told us that no illegal immigrants should be coming in. No immigrants should be coming in at all. We don't know anything about their status. Are they sick? Whatever. They wanted it closed down, which was more than whites at 57%. Regarding the border, Gilio also stands firmly against America sending a mountain of money that we do not even have to Ukraine to guard its eastern border 6,000 miles away, while our own U.S. border is effectively vaporized. Unlike Kevin McCarthy and his chosen toady in the 13th district, Gilio prioritizes helping Americans before escalating new wars being pushed by Biden, Pelosi, and the same establishment Republicans who created the Afghan and Iraq quagmires. Rest assured, if John Duarte was a congressman, he would have voted in a heartbeat for that $40 billion. For these reasons, combined with David's hustle across the district, additional polling shows that only Giglio will prevail in the Dem-leaning district in the fall. Among Hispanics in the district, McCarthy-backed candidate John Duarte trails the likely Democratic opponent in a head-to-head matchup, but Giglio has a 3-point lead among Hispanics. If Giglio advances beyond the June 7th primary with additional resources and months more to campaign into November, that lead will surely extend as his name recognition grows. The bad hombres and proud Latinas of the Central Valley already gravitate toward our movement. Let's give them the kind of leadership they need to cement their political conversion by supporting David Giglio. I will tell you this. This is a massive endorsement for David Giglio. He has big endorsements already, but this is the one that I would say cements him as the America First candidate, because there is confusion on the ground, and I'll tell you from polling it, there's confusion on the ground as to who really is the more America First candidate. They think this guy supports. They think this guy supports Donald Trump, the as Steve called him, the McCarthy toady. He does not support him, and he frankly can't stand him. And McCarthy is a winner if either one, whether it's Duarte or Gray, were to be in Congress, which it will be Gray. I'm telling you, it will be Gray if it's Duarte and not Giglio. That's it. It's end of story. Why? Because they're going to blast right away the Clean Water Act violations. Also, frankly, because he has no appeal to anyone outside of an element of the Republican base. The guy is sending out, ladies and gentlemen, he is sending out mailers of himself sitting there like with his truck, not even looking like he's dazed and confused, playing pocket pool with himself. With big, bold letters, I'm a conservative fighter. You're a fighter. You lost to the EPA. So you want someone who fights and loses or someone who fights and wins? It doesn't matter, because if the Water Act violation doesn't get him, the video of him saying Hispanics have to vote for me because they work for me will surely do him in. Not to mention, he will just be more of the same. Kevin McCarthy had a candidate. Everyone got behind him. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone. This is what the establishment was trying to stop. Tom McClintock, who I have it on good authority, is about to have a good day or good weekend. Kevin Kiley, endorsed by Trump. Obviously, Steve Cortez. Devin Mathis, who beat the Kevin McCarthy machine not once but twice. Shannon Grove, who is who's known Kevin for a long time, but is the base. She's the base. And Mayor Paul Crichton of Atwater, probably the most popular mayor in the Republican Party in California in recent history. He refused to go into a draconian lockdown. Trump brought him to the White House and everything. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. Kevin Cookingham is another very basey, but they're all, great. We're at the point now, we're counting them. It's almost 100 endorsements from community leaders from the base and base organizations. He's got all of the county party, and that's how this works in this country, folks. Most of the time, the county parties are the base, and you have the DC establishment swamp that comes in, and they either work with the county parties or they don't. And in this area, these people are so pissed that the DC establishment continues to throw these donor candidates in the race who go on to get their asses kicked. By the way, that's the most important thing. They get their asses kicked. Howard's Taxpayer Association, California Right to Life. I mean, it just goes on and on. And there was no point other than the fact that this is why he wanted someone else. David refused to say whether or not he would vote for him as speaker. It was that simple. He's like, I don't know. I'll see. Whoever is more America first. I'm there for the voters. I mean, I'll be happy to work with Kevin if he's, what he aims to be. I'm happy to. We need to unite to defeat Biden. That has always been what he has said, but that's not good enough. You need to get over on your hands and knees and give Kevin McCarthy a you-know-what so he knows you're loyal. And that's why he wanted this guy. Oh, and by the way, the op-ed just got bigger the other day. Some guy texted us back that $50,000 worth of trees he bought from this guy was diseased, and he refused to give his money back. He's like, I swear to God, I'm going to Adam Gray with this information. I'm like, This guy has he's done. He's done. Don's over there. Chuck, see Don's face. He's in the queue. Hey, Don, I'm going to bring you on actually now if you're ready, and then we'll take a quick break. All right, but by far, this is the biggest endorsement, I think, as far as being able to, not biggest period, but to be, I know, because everybody is like, I'm sure appreciated in their own way, but I mean, Cortez is really bona fide America first. And, this is something that if that was a question, it's not now. But it won't matter because I'm telling you, like I have been saying for years, in other areas like Texas 15, which is really the most comparable example I could give you to explain to you how important CA 13 is for the resurrection of the Republican Party in areas where they have been shut out for years. Orange County is gone, for now anyway. You have to, San Diego, for now, is gone. They voted to keep Gavin Newsom. They gave you a big, you know what? You have to learn to look at the map and say, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity. That's an opportunity. Even if it hasn't been one for you before. Democrats are much better at that. Much better at that. And Republicans have to get better, but they can't do it. Like Steve, he nailed it, man. He gets it because he knows how to read a freaking poll, by the way, but he gets it anyway. Now, this is more than just a race. This is about the political composition of our party, of the movement, and what it's going to be in the future. If the toady was, God forbid, able to get it, then you can count that out for the foreseeable future. That's how Jim Costa became, by the way. That's how Jim Costa became the 20-year congressman, damn near, of the 16th district in California. It wasn't particularly Democratic back then. Not when Costa first won it. He was sold like Adam Gray, who is his mentee. He was sold as somebody who was moderate. I'm a moderate Democrat. They're doing the same thing with Adam Gray. Adam Gray is the Democrat who introduced the bill to ban Donald Trump from the ballot in California. He has had 4 chances to repeal the state gas tax that he himself voted for and supported, and he refused to show up for the vote each time. He just hopes the people of the Central Valley don't realize this. I guarantee you the only one who can make that argument is David Giglio. No one is going to vote for the effing plantation owner, which is what the Hispanics, several we have heard from, have used. And there's like a silent farmer hate anti-Duarte vote. Anyway, we hear it all the time. And you can see it plainly on Twitter, as a matter of fact. All right. So I thought that was important. And coming off of the polling conversation, mark my words. I hope we don't have to find out that I was right the hard way. But I'm telling you, I'm right. And you will find out the hard way if you have to. And that's tragic. And it's tragic for those people because 3 of the poorest counties in California are in that district. They need some damn help. All right. So let's see how America first you really are. All right. So moving on, bringing in my buddy Don Smith. We'll take a commercial real quick. Actually, nah, the hell with that. Maybe we won't, Don. I just need a drink of water. So thanks for joining us as always, my buddy. We got a load of it, but I don't know if you had a chance. I know you were listening to the queue for a while, but I don't know if you saw that. But Steve Cortez endorsed David Giglio in that it's a proxy fight, Don, about what kind of party the Republican Party is going to be moving forward. If McCarthy, if Kevin McCarthy's toady, as Steve calls him, John Duarte were to win, it's like more of the same corporate. He would lose anyway. Adam Gray is going to kick his ass by 20 points. I'm serious. We are polling it. He is in fact, Diego, who's getting almost no vote share in the primary, would still do better than John Duarte against Adam Gray. That's what our polling shows. Why? Because he's got that negative vibe, that white, rich, privileged, I'm like a fake conservative fighter vibe. And there's like some Republicans who hate him, and there are Hispanics who will never vote for him, and the independents who will go with Gray. I mean, it's just that simple. All right. I mean, and by the way, I hear you. Fake Remington research polls aside, because I can show you Remington's polls. I put them on Twitter. They're not legitimate survey research. This company is doing such damage to my industry this year. You've watched it, Don. You know what I'm talking about. The fake polling crap for your client. And by the way, Josh Mandel has apparently claims that he didn't know what they were doing. He polls legit. I hope that's right for his sake. But they should be ashamed of themselves. Ashamed. So anyway, what's your take on this proxy fight in general? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think you summed it up perfectly. It's always about the demographics, and we know that. I mean, we deal with that all the time. So you've got to really look at the demographics there. Steve Cortez, that's a game changer, I think. I hope it is. You know, I think a lot of people have a lot of respect, including myself, for Steve and everything he's done and what he stands for, and what you were talking about, where he gets it right. He understands the makeup and everything that goes into all of this stuff. So it's going to be interesting to watch and see how this plays out. But I'm excited to see that there's some change, new blood coming into, especially California. I mean, we really need that. And we can try to, force in the most winnable this and the most winnable that and all these kind of things. But it's time to have real conservatives, real leadership. And you got to start somewhere to do that. So, yeah, I'm really curious to see how this plays out. I'm not going to be shy. I mean, I think David's a great candidate, and I would love to see him win that race.
Let me read you something, all right, from a speech he had given in Merced, okay? And this is, all right, he's had a very distinct message the whole time way through. And he says, the Central Valley isn't only our home. It's the last bastion of common sense in an authoritarian state that has descended into ideological insanity. But the future of our home and our nation is at stake. Biden, Pelosi, Newsom, and left-wing fascists have thrust us into a cost of living crisis. They wage war daily on our freedoms and liberties. It is critical we elect new leaders, fighters to represent us, to stop them from committing a collective suicide of the greatest society to have ever existed. And he goes on to say, I'm a political outsider, small business owner, and a husband and soon-to-be father. I'm a man who yearns for a return to constitutional sanity, as all of you do. And I will fight for it for the sake of that my family, my community, and my country. And he absolutely brings up how they surrendered to lawlessness. The Republican establishment has just completely failed us time and time again. But then brings it back to, it is here in the 13th district, like you talk about demographics, home to generations of farmers and workers, where we will plant a seed of conservatism that will take root, grow, and spread far beyond the Central Valley, even throughout the Golden State and across the nation, bearing the fruits of freedom to nurture future generations to come. I mean, on this night in this room, will lead a charge to historic Republican comeback, not only for the Valley, but for the nation. I vow and make this commitment to you tonight. I will work for you. I will fight for you, and I will win this district for you. And the crowd went nuts. You know, I mean, and by the way, he got the endorsement because that was for the Merced County endorsement. And he just got up there, threw out the usual script. You know, Duarte was like, I'm a farmer. And I've been farming forever. And I've been, and Mexicans will vote for me because they work for me. I'm like, Jesus. And it's like, you know, the Republican establishment is so stupid. You know, I'm serious. The NRCC, they're so dumb. They didn't realize that was a campaign ending statement.
Okay.
And it's like, if you have to explain this to them, then what the hell are they doing in leadership positions? Mm-hmm. And I submit to everybody, it doesn't matter who the hell you elect president, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't give this guy the infrastructure, whether it's Trump, it's DeSantis, or some dark horse, we don't know. If you don't give him the infrastructure and you give him a bunch of John Duartes and Kevin McCarthy, then you'll be treading water forever. Because they will stab you in the back time and time again. He doesn't even know. He was sitting there with this dumb look on his face, like he didn't even understand the significance of what David was saying. You know, and a base is like, oh yeah, give him the endorsement. And Kevin McCarthy comes in with $500,000. No joke, like 15 mailers, to the point where people on SMS are responding like, can you tell that guy to stop mailing me stuff? It's just unbelievable. But it's a, you know, it's a perfect example. It's a perfect example of where we're at here, right? And what it all comes down to. I mean, it really is a perfect example. So, you know, it is what it is.
Well, I think
it is what it is.
it's an example. What we're seeing here is that the leadership on both sides are completely out of touch with the voters. They're completely out of touch with the American people. I think the advantage for the right is that we're not as far down that road yet, right? So the differences between a McCarthy and the voter, it's there, and we get it, and we all understand it. We're all disappointed. Well, most of us are disappointed in what's going on with Republican leadership. Look how far gone the left is with their leadership. So it's really important to take back the House, take back the Senate. All those things are important. We've got the perfect field to do that, the perfect, you know, environment to do that. We need new leadership. We can't let our leadership take it as far away from what we value, what we believe, as has happened on the left. The left, they're at a point of no return, right? I mean, the squad is going to be the leadership. Let's face it. They've already won that war, or they've won all the battles so far, right? The war hasn't been declared over yet, but it's pretty close. So we've got to pay attention to this. It's not just about winning the House. It's not just about winning the Senate. It's about new leadership that actually represents the majority of the party. And I think that's really the big thing going into all this. I think you're muted, Rich.
I am muted. Thank you, Don, for catching that quick. We're gonna go back. We are gonna take a 2-minute 46-second break. Even less if I can come back on time, because I got to go and improve this thing before you know, Laura needs my John Hancock. So we'll be right back. You're watching Inside the Numbers. Don Smith's joining us. We got a lot to discuss on the other half of this. All right, so we'll be back, folks. Don't go anywhere.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love just for a little fun. I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear overnight, just to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna
Putting on the brakes. Sorry, I didn't even give Don a warning. Yeah, that's cool. That worked. Yeah, so I'm super stoked about it too. I love toys, Don. Are you like me? I like toys. Guns, firearms, they're not toys, but I mean, you consider them like men, you know, can definitely consider them certainly in their own category, but not quite that. But you know, anything, surveillance stuff like that. It's all, you know, it's toys, man. It's cool. Anyway, and by the way, well, I don't want to out him like that, but hardworking Trumper. Hardworking Trumper. So yeah, basically, Don, so here we are now. We have California coming up on June 7th. We have a bunch of other stuff coming up. And I think what you said before the break is important, which is we're focusing completely, and the media is doing it. We shouldn't, but it's like, oh, who Trump endorsed, and then what's Trump's win-loss record? You said it best. And if the roles were reversed, this would be the story. That Democrats, the leftists, they're not moderate, they are leftists, are winning their fight right now. And they won it in Pennsylvania. They won it in what was the other one? Kentucky. There's been a bunch of them. They're defeating even incumbent Democratic congressmen because of redistricting and pitted a more. They keep calling them progressive. There's nothing progressive about them. They're commies and like basically left wing fascists. Not even commies in some respect, because it is fascism. It's not communism. We got to stop using that word, Don, because communism is public ownership. They really do want their friends in charge, and then the government directs them. That's fascism. It's the economic definition of fascism. And they're nuts. and they're doing it in a year where it's a first-term incumbent midterm where they're expected for their party to take heavy losses. If Republicans were doing that, getting more basey or like what they would consider the radical right? In a cycle where they're expected as a party to perform worse, that would be the story. Like, oh, they just threw away their best chance of holding that district. Republicans are getting so nuts, that would be the story here. And I think you're right. Nancy Pelosi is an old ass lady, bro. All right. All of her lieutenants, the ones that are remaining and haven't been defeated, ask Richard Engel, are all old. The party of the Democratic Party that is young, new, and winning is a far left ideology of anti-Americanism and everything else that made this country that this country rejected and is what made it so great. And no one's focusing on it. We're focusing on stupid palace intrigue stuff like Donald Trump's win-loss record, which is interesting, but it's not the full story. That's why I said the fight in Texas 28. I know we had a lot of elections that night, but the most important election was Texas 28. If Henry didn't hold on, and there will be a recount, and Cisneros beat him, that would have been because he is who he is, if he holds on, he'd be lucky. But still 49% of the district voted against Henry Cuellar on a Democratic primary. Like that is what is, if there is a center in this country, it's close to it, even though Henry votes with Pelosi a lot still, at least on social issues, he's still socially conservative and he's does not like the open border, which is why they had the FBI kick his door in because they got pissed that he kept giving, undermining their open border policy. So they sent the FBI to kick his door in. Let's get real. And yet this woman comes out of nowhere with this radical who doesn't even believe in ICE. She thinks border patrol agents basically should be abolished. And she damn near defeated him. And that race is not over yet. They're still counting votes. There's a recount. There's other stuff. That needs to be done. You said it, Don, and nobody's talking about it.
Well, and there's another thing that nobody's talking about here too, Rich. And so we talk about on the right being disappointed with the leadership and all these kind of things. This is happening tenfold on the left. But with the media the way it is, they're not talking about it. A lot of the conservative media isn't picking up on this for some reason. But this is going on tenfold on the left compared to what we're talking about our leadership. They don't like their leadership either. Right? They don't think they don't like the Pelosi. You think AOC sits down and breaks bread with Nancy Pelosi? Of course not. They can't stand each other. The thing that happened here, and I want everybody to think about this for a minute. Think how differently the candidates in this coming midterm, think how differently it would look had Donald Trump lost. Had he lost that nomination and not been elected president in 2016. Think about that. That's what we broke the mold, right? So on the right, we broke the mold. On the left, they couldn't break the mold. And if you can't break the mold, they're going to keep pulling you. And that's exactly what's going on. So they're every bit as disappointed in their leadership as we are, even more so, I say. But we just talk about it openly and they don't.
Yeah, and again, I was talking about this the other day a little bit, like 2020. I really wanted to know whether it would be the year that Democrats declared their independence, basically from the media and their party, who they seem to can't, not like at all. Yet, unfortunately, for them, and I do say unfortunately because I wish they had more control over their own party. I do, I mean, all voters should. I hate party politics, man. I can't stand it. They do because why? Because it's so unrepresentative. It's not about representation and self-governance. It's about party rules. It's about what's best for the party's machine. And the people always suffer that. If you're not connected at all, you will suffer. It's that simple. I gotta ask you this too. Somebody had said, will there be projections about how many House and Senate seats? We'll do a lot of that on what are the odds as it starts to get a little bit, and we'll talk, of course, about it on inside the numbers. But when I, do have my hands directly with some certain people, I don't feel it's ethical for me to make a projection on those races because I feel like you guys may think that I'm doing so because I'm connected with somebody. And honestly, frankly, that's the way it should be. Like, you shouldn't have talking heads on TV, on Fox News, who directly know people in the campaign or are working for the campaign that make these projections and then really push them, Don, as like legitimate analysis. You know what I mean? That was the Fox News model for picking nominees across up and down the ballot for many, many years. And they used to make their viewers think, oh, this is an expert. And this expert's just telling you what he thinks. But no, he's not. They're really tied to Mitt Romney, and they're BSing you about his electability. That's it. I mean, really. So I don't want to mirror emulate those people. So we haven't done the PPD election projection model since that has been the case. And I frankly think that's the way it's got to go. Now, polling is different. We'll have probably a map up of different places we're polling. And definitely, just like we did in 2020. But that, of course, is assuming, as he says, America First be, assuming Republicans don't betray them, he says, us on the Second Amendment, because that is true. You know this, and I know this, Don. Gun voters, it's like abortion. The downside risk is all to Republicans. The ones who are anti-gun are going to vote anyway. The people who are behind the temporary bump in support for gun laws, that vaporizes anyway in 2 weeks, they're going to vote on their pocketbook. Those pro Second Amendment voters are the ones you risk alienating, and they will sit on their butt to teach you a lesson. They will. And so the downside's all on their side. What do you think?
Yeah, totally
on the Republican
agree.
side.
Yeah, I totally agree. And everybody's got to understand this. So, and I'm talking to any Republican who might be thinking, maybe I need to get on board. So I look bipartisan and I look all this whatever. No matter what you do, it will never be enough. And I think back to the David Hogg, the Parkland thing, right? So here you had Rick Scott, and it was very disappointing. I think we even talked about this before. Very disappointing. Red flag laws, raise the age of purchasing the weapons, all these kind of things. So he caved, right? He caved on all these issues. One of them was they were gonna harden the schools. Right. So they're going to harden the schools, have metal detectors when you came in. They proposed having clear backpacks so that people could see what was in the backpacks. These guys came out and shredded every single one of those things. No matter what you give them, it will never be enough for somebody like
wanted a ban.
They wanted a
period.
Ban. Even if you did that, though, nothing is ever enough to a true leftist, to a true extremist. It's all about just being angry. And if you were ever to give them everything they wanted, they would say, oh yeah, but we wanted this and this and this, right? Because they've got to stay angry. That's just what they do. So people need to understand that. Anything you ever give them, David Hogg mocked Rick Scott about the clear backpacks. They said it was, well, what about feminine products that the girls are, come on, really? That's more important than, so it's never about actually preventing any of these things. Everybody's got to understand that these are wedge issues. They don't ever want these things to go away because they can, which party tries to capitalize politically every single school shooting? Which one? The right or the left?
And we have now, if you're watching YouTube, they grab these parents and, your heart goes out to them. But the fact of the matter is, sir, it would not have stopped your child from being killed. You live in a blue state in Sandy Hook. One of the fathers from Sandy Hook. You live in a blue state. You're not allowed to get those firearms anyway. So how did he get them? Come on. I got to ask something uncomfortable here. I knew it was going to be asked since yesterday, but because it's been no secret, you and I think Rebecca Clayfish is an incredible candidate. And so somebody asked, do you know Tim Michaels or Michelle's, however you say it?
Michaels.
Do you know that candidate? Or how much do you know about him? Because I think a lot of people are like, I'm a little confused here about the Trump endorsement. That he's not a big name. It wasn't like this was Rhino against base, because it's not. So what do you make of this, man?
Well, okay, so Tim Mickles runs a huge construction.
There we go.
He runs a big construction company in Wisconsin. Business guy, Republican, always been a Republican. He's kind of the Paul Ryan kind of Republican. Was very supportive of Paul Ryan throughout his time. I guess let me say this in full disclosure: there's a possibility that I might be coming a part of this campaign. I'll give an update next week as soon as I know exactly what's going on. So I just want to put that out there right now. I'll just leave that at that. But I'm really surprised by this, and it's a head scratcher for me. I don't get it. This is a situation, and I'll just tell you what I know. This is a situation where a candidate was brought in, right? I mean, this was a pre-done thing. And I'm not saying that as nefarious or anything. It's just the way it is. This was a candidate that was brought in for some reason, unbeknownst to me. I don't know what the issue was with Rebecca Clayfish. I think she did an incredible job as the Attorney General, or I'm sorry, the you know what I mean, the governor, the Scott Walker's assistant there.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm just so I'm sorry. I'm getting like I don't get it. I really don't understand this one, but I guess I don't have to understand everything. My belief is I believe in Rebecca Clayfish and her campaign. I think she'd do a great job leading Wisconsin. But yeah, there's something going on there that I'm not quite totally sure.
Yeah, I just
exactly is happening.
I just don't. Shirley Clayfish will still win, right? I'll tell you what. There's going to be a lot of love for Rebecca Clayfish, regardless. And Trump's endorsement has more regional impact some places than others. Wisconsin, certainly, it holds weight, but it is one state. If you remember, guys, Ted Cruz did win. And the reason why is because there is how can I put it? There is a traditional conservative element. They are in love with Clayfish and Walker, and I'm not sure that everybody who would be more like the Mickles electorate, I'm not sure there aren't some of them who would say, you know what, okay, fine, I respect your decision, but I'm still going to vote for Rebecca. I mean, honestly, why? Because she has a history. When you have a record the way she has, folks, when you have mobs, beating down your door and you still hold firm, and you prove yourself. You know what I'm saying? You prove yourself. It's really that simple. And so, yeah, I actually do think she's still the favorite here. I really do. All right. So we hear that there is a serious turmoil in the Biden administration. Do you think people want him to get less radical, or are the button pushers wanting him to get more radical before the red wave? That's a great question. What do you think about that, Don? I'll let you take that first, buddy. What a great question.
So I'll go back again. It is a great question. This party has been pulled to the left. They are getting yanked to the left right now. You notice how little you hear from Nancy Pelosi anymore, right? She was always straight to the microphone. There was never any question that she was the leader, that she was the Speaker of the House, that she led that party. Not anymore. That's not the way it's working anymore. So they want him to get more radical. Huge problem that Biden has and that anybody on the left has coming into elections. And let me just take one issue right here. The student loan thing. So they want it all paid off. Just like I said about the David Hogg, and that it's never going to be enough when it comes to the Second Amendment. You'll never give them everything they want, even if you give them everything they said they wanted. They'll say more. No, well, we want this too. We want this too. It's the same thing with the student loan thing. They're not going to be happy with you. I'm already seeing it. It's all over social media. I'm not voting for this. Guy's only going to pay off $10,000 of my loan. And they want it all. They want it all and then some. Even if Biden said, okay, I'm going to pay off your whole loan. You've got $200,000 in student loans. I'm paying it all off. You know what they would complain about? They would complain that he didn't send them the check so they could pay it off. Right? It
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
matter.
yeah.
You will never please these people.
It's not going
That's
to be
just
enough.
they're activists. You've ramped them up. You've gotten them angry. You've gotten them full of despair. There's no hope that so. Of course, they want him to be more radical. They want him to do all these things with the abortion and all ultra
Yep.
MAGA and the MAGA, great MAGA king and all this stupid stuff that he's running around doing right now, like a teenager.
I know. What the hell, man? It's so we're really at a level of immaturity with these
Oh my
leaders. I
God.
said, I don't know if it was Wednesday or Friday show, but I was like, basically, we're in an era and it's sad because it's an era that it's the first one where the generation is basically unworthy of what the prior one gave them, even though I can find certain flaws in prior generations.
Mhm.
The American people still, when the time came, rose to the occasion to meet these challenges, and the statesmen stepped up, and and reason prevailed, and this is not happening, Don, and it's going on for a long time like this. So it's like eventually, if it was going to happen, would it have? And a lot of people thought that moment would come when Trump was elected, but like I said, getting back to California 13, I mean, if you have too many John Duartes and not enough David Gillios, it doesn't matter how many Trumps you elect. It just doesn't matter. Or, by the way, Scott Walker's or Ron DeSantis's. It won't matter because those people, Ronald Reagan was stabbed in the back by his own party. Maybe some of you are too old to, too young to remember this, but Ronald Reagan was betrayed by his own party. They tried to get him too with Iran. They with the Iran-Contra scandal, they started getting cold feet and they jumped on board with Democrats. They're the ones who stopped Ronald Reagan from completely dismantling the Department of Education, the federal government's hold over local education. They're the ones who were, and which, by the way, you can give them fault for the current situation now, which is that we spend an absorbent amount on money per pupil, and we have the worst results of Western nations. So, I mean, it's just unbelievable. And I mean, worst results like money spent result, two results. Like our ratio is pathetic. It's hard. It's ridiculous. A lot of questions were about Rebecca Clayfish, by the way. I just got to bring that up. A lot. So, I mean, I know WC Lice. There's just a lot of them. The people say, well, I'm sure Rich will get to it. And Derek. So Junior Spider says, this is a great question, Govan, because it's relevant to what you were just talking about. Why aren't more Republicans bringing up the 2020 D.C. riots in response to gun control? They let the criminals who shot Sequoia Turner set up that roadblock. They let the Chaz go on for weeks. 5 people were killed in it. They want to come after guns aggressively, but they also want to let criminals run the streets. I mean, this is such an easy argument to make. I just made it in the first 30 minutes. I showed, deference, respect, also compassion towards the victims' families, but at the same time used my God-given reason to lay out the fact, which is true. It is a fact, and that it would not have prevented that man's child from being killed. That no matter what they're asking for right now, they still would have got it. I mean, the bottom line is, and this 21 age thing is so arbitrary and stupid. Rick Scott caved, and like you said, in the end, they didn't want, David Hogg and company didn't want a gun ban up to 21. He didn't want that. They want a repeal of the Second Amendment. And unless you start to have this conversation openly and honestly, then they always say, well, you can't come to the table. You can't even come to the table on it. The NRA has such a hold on you. When you're ready to come to the table honestly with your true goal in mind, then I'll be ready to talk to you. In the meantime, I'm focusing on the true problem, which is cultural sickness and rot. The Second Amendment was ratified in December 1791. Modern phenomena of mass shootings began in 1966. What the hell happened in that course of time? It was like the frontier was almost completely unregulated. It was basically unregulated. And yet we didn't have these acts of depravity. Somebody got shot over a card game or a gambled on. They did not go out into the street and start shooting 15 people in a saloon because they were sick. Right. You know what I mean? And by the way, because they may have wanted, the Tombstone local paper to print notoriety about them. And this is another thing I'm not going to let go. You know it because you've seen it, the studies, we've gone over it. They are killing people. The media is killing people. They are inspiring mass shootings. They know it. They don't care. By the way, for those people, those parents, you really want to hold someone accountable, hold the media accountable, because, and some parents have chosen to do that. They even partnered after Parkland, partnered with the FBI to try to get the media to change how they do this, but they don't care. Even Fox News, by the way. You can't let them off, though. They don't give a crap. It makes me so angry. I have 2 school-age children, one that eventually will be in school. They don't care about them. They don't care if Nico gets gunned down tomorrow, man, as long as it helps push the Second Amendment. They're disgusting, evil people. You know this, Tom. The clicks are more important. The ideology is more important. The views are more important. It's disgusting. And you brought up student loan debt. You have been all over this for a long time. There are even now plans to wipe that 10,000 off, but also, you have some Democrats releasing plans basically saying we're going to garnish your wages 10% so we still teach you responsibility, but we don't make you pay as much as your student loan payment is. We're just going to garnish it, though. That's the catch. And we'll extend it out if you're having a hard time so much percent above the poverty line. Don, holy crap. 10% garnish above the poverty line, your income. And why don't we ask universities and colleges? Really, they're going to love. Why don't we deal with the real problem, which is that the inflation, we have the CPI. The only thing to outpace the CPI by a factor of 4 or more a year for 10 years straight is the rise and increase in tuition. And yet these pieces of have billions and billions in debts. And you know the numbers. You've heard it.
So, okay. So I served in the military during the age of the $50 hammer, right? Why was the hammer $50?
Yeah.
It wasn't $50 at the hardware store, same hammer. Why was it $50? Because they were selling it to the government. They were selling it to the government. It was a no-bid contract. We are the supplier of hammers to the government. So in my case, it was the Navy. That's why it was a $50 hammer. I could go buy the same hammer for $5 at Ace Hardware or any other hardware store or whatever it was. But that's why. So, geez, what do you think's going to happen when you make student loans? I know, let's make it to the government. Who's selling the product now? The college is selling the product. Geez, there's no competition here. So they jacked their tuitions up. Nobody's mentioned that. I'm not going to try to conflate both the issues, the guns and the schools, but just I want to think about this from a ideological standpoint. If you're looking to solve a problem, you don't just, in this case, pay off all the student loan debt, because 10 years from now, geez, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have a whole new crop of people that need their student loans paid off. Not only that, you made it worse because now they have no intentions of ever making even a single payment on their student. Why would they? The government's going to swoop in and they're going to pay it off. Not one conversation about the billions and billions of dollars, Harvard, Stanford, all these schools that they have sitting in a bank. How about having them pay some of this off? Not one single conversation about why does a kid have a $200,000 student loan? It's not because of the interest, all because of the interest. It's not all because of this or that. Why do they have a $200,000 student loan? That's a house, for crying out loud. Not one conversation. So my point is this. They don't want to solve anything. These are political wedge issues that they use to get votes, money, power, period.
I'll tell you, basically in these endowments, they have billions of dollars and billions of dollars. Why doesn't the federal government, if you really want to be America first, you want to be pro-working class, you want to be pro-family, why don't they pass a bill for private institutions that have so much more in their endowments, have to use part of that endowment to subsidize tuition costs? You do that, I guarantee you, tuition is going to plummet, completely plummet, that we will not pay these loans. We will not back these loans at these low certain interest rates. Instead, you will have to use your endowments to supplement the cost of the tuition if your tuition is higher than this much, an unjustifiable amount. Because the truth is, a lot of these people live a little bit too damn comfortable. They were never supposed to have all of these. It's not just the salary, it's all the perks that go along with it. I know in our school there was a big scandal because basically the amenities that were given to some of these people were totally ridiculous. Totally ridiculous. And we had to change presidents over it. Nothing ever really got changed, though. And they were a state funded, they were a state college, state university, actually, but yeah, basically, whatever. It is what it is.
Can I say one thing?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Sure.
This is something that I think got lost on a lot of people. And there's a reason it got lost, not because anybody's stupid, but because this is the way the media played it. The Scott Walker, Rebecca Clayfish thing, when they were in office in Wisconsin, the whole thing that happened over the really what it was the cost of insurance, right? So the public sector unions, those whose salaries are paid by the taxpayers of Wisconsin, they had free health care. Like this amazing package of healthcare. Cool, good for them. That's great. There was a state law passed in the 50s that stated that the taxpayer should never have to pay 100% of the cost of somebody in a public sector union, because they're paid for by the taxpayer, that they should never have to pay 100% of their healthcare costs. That was really what that whole thing was all about. That got lost right from the beginning. It got very big because if you said that to people that way, they'd go, well, that makes sense. They should have to pay a little bit of their own healthcare costs. But instead, they made it all about this. He's trying to break the unions. And you had all these private sector unions who were coming in and they were going, oh, no, they're going to take away. We can't bargain anymore. It became all about whether they could bargain or not. It had nothing to do with that. It was a simple fairness thing that said, don't make the taxpayers pay for all of your stuff. That's exactly what we're doing here with this education thing. People that actually were responsible, that paid off their loans, are now being asked to pay off the loans of people who just don't want to pay it off. I can't afford a house now. I can't afford it. Well, thank God you didn't buy a house, because you'd want us to pay that off too. This is insane.
I like this comment too. States should audit their colleges and universities. If 50% or less students aren't in their trained field, they should lose their accreditation. I mean, there's just no oversight, Norm. There's nothing. There's no oversight. They're just running free, running rampant. And yet they're never asked to explain why they are always 4 times fold the rise of inflation. Why they're always raising tuition that much. By the way, somebody said, if only we had a government disinformation bureau as a joke. And I forgot we didn't even go over this, but I'll show this with you. Maybe we can do this on your show a little bit more, whatever you want to do. But the U.S. administration, and it's a big, long prompt, so the crosstab's weird. The administration has announced the creation of a government disinformation governance board under the Department of Homeland Security to monitor disinformation. Opponents criticized it as dangerous censorship and argued authoritarian regimes all used a, quote, ministry of truth to control free speech, a reference to George Orwell's dystopian novel 1984. Under scrutiny, the administration this week announced it would pause implementing the board. Do you support or oppose the creation of a government disinformation board or a, quote, ministry of truth, right? 39.4% strongly opposed it. So like 4 in 10 right off the bat. Another almost 12% somewhat opposed it. So you had about 52% who did oppose it, but 28.4%, Don. 28.4% who supported the government disinformation board. That scares the hell out of me. You have basically more than a quarter of the people in this country who want government to police speech. Yeah. That to me is scary, man.
Okay, so those are the people that still think Biden's doing a great job. So I bet they feel a little differently if Donald Trump's in charge of the government that runs the Ministry of Truth. I bet you they feel a little bit differently then. Well, what do you think?
Oh my God. Right. Because of course they don't think that far ahead, do they?
Right. Bonhoeffer.
That's right. Yeah, man. And I can't believe I forgot to show that, but I thought that was worth bringing up. Speaking of which, from our last Kevin McCarthy segment, all right, this guy's just 53%, 53.4% unfavorable, including 31.2 who are now very unfavorable. and only about 24% who have a favorable opinion of this guy. Can Republicans effectively lead with leadership that unpopular, Don? Take a look at McConnell. And again, what's interesting to me is the party. We don't have to go over it in detail, but you can see Republicans can't stand their own party leaders. And at least with Democrats, they are. And there's actually, again, now, this is not the first time this has happened, multiple times, maybe 4 or 5 out of the public polling projects we did. More Democrats than Republicans actually had a very favorable view of Kevin McCarthy. So, I mean, of Mitch McConnell, excuse me. What does that tell you, man? What the hell does that tell you?
Everything you need to know.
Everything you need to know. They're like, thanks for being so ineffective. None but love for you.
You know, the only time that people like McConnell and Kevin McCarthy show any actual leadership or any actual work ethic or actually put their mind to something and roll up their sleeves is to take out fellow Republicans. So they can control their power, so they can keep their power, so that they can. It's frustrating to me, and I'm sure a lot of other people watching right now.
Yeah, I think that honestly, when all is said and done, it's not sustainable. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't believe it can be sustainable. I just don't. I think at some point, it'll either go one way or the other. I mean, either they will win or their voters will win. You'd like to think that the voters have all the power, but the truth is, there's a lot of perfect races where we can, make the case and show that, in fact, the party still. Why? Because they lie. The forces of good don't like to lie as much as the forces of bad. And sometimes, Laura said it, sometimes it's just easier to believe the lie. You know what I mean? And there are still some people out there in the Republican Party who don't want to believe that their leaders in the end would do them, and it's just easier to believe the lies instead of the hard truths. And I think when we get bogged down talking about, this one's got a cognitive bias, it doesn't allow them to see this one's got, sometimes Laura's right. It just comes down to flat out, it's easier to believe the lie. And
sometimes she's right.
Yeah.
You're in trouble now.
I'm telling her she should get, at least, you don't want to be in camera, at least an audio show. Laura's always right. I just worry because she is a firebrand. And I do personally worry about just some bomb, coming out of nowhere. Yeah, she's just totally off the rocker. And not off the rocker, but she'll say it how it is. And she don't care if it hurts your damn feelings. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. Which honestly, too, I think is a big part of culture. Don't kick me in the butt for this, Laura, but Italians, Hispanics, we just don't care if we hurt your feelings. If it's true, it's true. Get over it. And if you don't like it, if there's something about it that you don't like because it hurts your feelings, that's your fault. That's something you need to examine then. If it's true, it's true. And if you don't like that and it hurts you or your feelings, then, deal with that, address that, and that's it. But by the way, too, Jay, that was another great about the people around. Normally, this is the danger, too, to expand off one person's question about the direction the Biden administration is going to take. You have stupid intrigue stories like Kamala Harris gets mad because people don't stand up when she walks in the room for her, crap like that. The problem with Joe Biden's lack of mental capacity, which is very real now. Did you see the baby formula clip? He's like, the reporter says, why didn't you foresee the baby formula crisis? He says, no, I don't think any of us could have foresaw the baby formula crisis. Basically, I'm summing up. She goes, didn't the heads of the companies just tell you, tell all of us that they told you so many months ago? And he goes, yeah, they did, but I didn't. That doesn't even make sense. But I know what it means. I think his dumb brain, his senile brain, alluded to the truth, which is they did tell the administration.
I didn't listen. But
I didn't hear or listen. Yes. And right. And that's the danger with the competing factions in a White House when you have a president who isn't in control of his faculties, because who's controlling the factions? Who's directing the factions back and forth? You're right. I mean, That's normally what happens in a White House. They're competing factions. They're each trying to get the presidency ear for whatever policy direction they want to move in. And the president's job is to sort them out and make a decision. Who's going to win? Which way we're going to go? What direction we're going to go in? Joe Biden isn't doing that. He's not there. He's an empty suit. Day one, folks. What is this? What am I signing? I knew it before they released the audio. I knew exactly what happened there. He didn't know what he was signing. And they didn't even care that he didn't know. Don't worry about it. We'll explain it to you later. Sign. And he did. And I think in that particular, he signed away the Keystone XL pipeline, along with our energy independence. Or at least a part of it, anyway, because it's been multiple things that do it. I mean, that's where, that's where it is. Let's see what else I can get. Maybe we should raise the age of taking on debt to 21, since it appears college students can't handle the responsibility. It's not really a question. It was more of a joke with a smiley face and everything. But I mean, honestly, that's the thing about this. It's like these arbitrary numbers, Don. All they're doing is measuring maturity level. And the fact that we're at 21 for drinking, for this, for that, it tells me that we're a very immature society compared to certain European countries where it's at least 18. Mm-hmm. At least, And Adam Kinzinger wants us to be more like Europe with guns, but like not reduce the drink. It just makes no sense. You have no logical argument. None.
Right. One of the most important things that we do as Americans is vote. It's one of the most important things we do. It's one of the most where you need responsibility. You need to at least understand what's going on. I'm not saying that's always the case with everybody that votes, but that's the design of the system. You've got the left right now, the same ones who are talking about raising the age for people to buy a gun, who want to lower the age to 16 to vote. Make that make sense. Make that make sense to me. That's one of the most. That's one of the biggest things we do as Americans is our vote. I mean, you want to talk about responsibility and the need to be responsible and mature and understand things, and make that make sense, left.
I put this up just because I know some people are asking about certain things in like swing districts, and I'll get to Minnesota first, after this, Jonathan. But Info Strategy Northeast, I'm not familiar with this polling group, but I will tell you this. This is what I've been talking about with some of the polls, the fake polls that we have seen, and Remington Research should be ashamed of themselves. They have for Katie Arrington, the Trump-endorsed candidate in South Carolina, won. They put out a poll weeks ago, showed Katie Arrington 20 points ahead. Katie, I'm telling you right now, get another pollster. You're using the establishment pollster that's been used by everyone who tried to take out the Trump candidate in Pennsylvania, Ohio, now in California. The McConnell's toady, John Duarte, uses Remington. They just put out the biggest fake poll I've ever seen. I've been waiting for them to do it because I had the poll, and I know what they did. They used the quote informed ballot trick, which Jim Lee from Susquehanna saw and went nuclear on Twitter. It's not legitimate research. You can't give your client a resounding bio and then trash your opponent and then ask, okay, now who you're going to vote for. That is called an informed ballot. It is maybe beneficial if your campaign is trying to learn things, but it is not to be released for public consumption as a legitimate poll, because that is not a scientifically conducted poll. All right. So then we had Mace's group, which is Basswood Research. I do know Basswood. In fact, they and I were very similar in states like Arizona in 2020 when everyone else was off their freaking rocker. Fox News, Biden +6. We were showing very close margins. So I can attest that Basswood has had some pretty decent polling. And in North Carolina, by the way, they did some very good polling in North Carolina. Now, this one, I don't know that much, but it comes after, a day or two? Trafalgar released theirs, showing Mace up by 8, which was another blow to fake Remington Research. But at least believable. You got to expect, don't you? You got to expect this race is competitive, Don, right? And now we have this one showing Mace only up by 43.9 to 38.5. And something jumped right out at me. We see Katie Arrington doing better with women than men. We too are seeing Republican women more anti-establishment and more pro-change, more anti-incumbent. We are seeing that in polling we've been doing in states and races around the country, and even nationally. Their women are just more angry right now, and it kind of makes sense, right? I mean, they deal with the shortages more than men, don't they? I mean, let's be real, right? They deal with, with some stuff that men just don't deal with, and they're seeing now. So I kind of, I wouldn't dismiss this poll. I really wouldn't. I there are things in it that make sense to me, and I would not dismiss it at all. And I do think, Trafalgar's awfully close, about 3 points away, Mace's lead. But, I don't think she has a 20-point lead like the Mace's pollster is saying. But I certainly don't think, like Remington told Katie, she has a 20-point lead. I just don't. I don't see it at all. What do you think is her biggest challenge? And not just her, but these other Trump-endorsed candidates. What do you think their major challenge is? South Carolina, he's wildly popular. Carolina 1 is a little bit more moderate. For sure, it's more moderate. But he's still, that endorsement carries weight. So it does. And period. I mean, Trump won Horry County, for crying out loud. The sweater vest wearing Republican county of golf teeing off. So he won it overwhelmingly. So, I'm just saying, what do you think these candidates? There are some that just seem to not be. Something's missing, and it is hard to defeat an incumbent. Period.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that's really what I was going to say. There was this. It's hard to beat the incumbent. Number one, you start out with a war chest. Yeah. You've already got your infrastructure in place. I'm talking like fundraising and all those kind of things. But the big thing Nancy Mace has had in her favor is she's got the built-in media stuff already. So she's already got those connections. That's a tricky. That's a world I work in, obviously. So yeah. I understand
Fox News.
Yeah, I understand the good.
Hell out of it.
I understand the good, the bad, and the ugly of it, and so that is going to be the biggest challenge to overcome. It's name recognition is what it comes down to. So, if you're not that incumbent, if you're not in that position, your best thing is to. I heard you talking about it before. The key to all of this stuff is always a ground game. Get out there and talk to the voters. Yep. Because those people watching Nancy Mace on the Fox News hit, number one, they may not even live there, right? So they're not voters. They just, okay, her name recognition may be higher. It only matters if your name recognition is higher with the actual people that vote. So if you want to overcome all that stuff, get out there, knock doors, get signs up, do everything you can to connect with the voters. Politics is local. Elections are local. You've got to win it with the people that can actually go and cast a vote for you. So I guess that would be my recommendation if I were given recommendation. But that's the challenges that they all face. Nancy Mace has got to go up against Trump, and that's not always easy. And and on the other side of it, it's the incumbent. You got to beat the incumbent. So.
There's also a lot of digital stuff that we've been pioneering that you can do to increase your name recognition pretty fast. But it's got to be personal, and I'm not giving it away. You want it, come pay for it. You know what I mean? That's it. I'm serious. But right. I'm tired of giving people free advice, Don. Screw them. But also too, I would say residential signs are better than your signs that you just put on the highway, folks. I mean, people seem to know their neighbors, of course. They know what kind of people they are. It definitely is indicative of stronger support. And by the way, the establishment knows that, and they actually pay people to rip your signs down. All right, which is a felony, but they do it. John Duarte's doing it, and he admitted he did it to David Giglio. He said, we're going to rip your signs down. And in fact, they are ripping David Giglio's signs down. But he's not doing it personally. He pays these consultants to do it. And by the way, all they do is plagiarize his stuff. It's hilarious. Like cost of living crisis, he stole right from him. Gas tax gray, he stole right from him. This guy's, he's like a vendor's wet dream. And I know Laura hates when I say that, but it's true because all they do is scour social media to see what America First is saying, and then they duplicate it. He's not alone. They all do it. They all do it. But they know what Don's saying is true. Those signs that are out there, they do raise your name recognition. But of course, you need fundraising to pay for those signs, right? To get them out there. So, it's tricky. It's difficult, without a doubt. But at the same time, too, you have got to make sure, I think, a major problem with some of the Trump-endorsed candidates is they didn't really have a plan to get that endorsement out there. They didn't realize that Donald Trump's not on Twitter anymore. He's not on Facebook anymore. So you cannot rely on him to tweet it out to his 15 plus million followers and for it to be picked up. And the media is intentionally blacking out America First candidates. They will not cover them because they realize Donald Trump beat them at their own game in 2016. They used it against him in 2020, although a little less effective because you can't not cover the president. You cannot cover his rallies, which they did. But the bottom line is they're blacking you out. So you need a plan to reach the voter directly. We are the Trump endorsed candidate, and they have not been able to do that. That has been a big why. How do I know? Because 60% in the state of Georgia told me they had no idea who Donald Trump had endorsed. It's incredible to swallow that. It's just incredible. And Save America, I went and I looked at it. They spent money. They gave it to other groups to spend, but they spent money. They did. They didn't run the ads themselves, but they gave money to people to put those ads up. And something else was missing here, man. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Keep your message, by the way. I just want to say that real quick. I am endorsed by Donald Trump is not good enough. You are lucky or honored enough to get that endorsement. Make damn sure that you earn it.
Yep.
And many are not. I'm sorry. That's just my flat true.
It can be just as simple as explaining why does he endorse you. Donald Trump endorses me because I stand strong on this and I believe in this and I did.
That's right.
And we align in these areas. And it's so easy to do. There's two kinds of candidates. I mean, to really generalize it for everybody, there's two kinds of candidates. There's candidates that let things happen, and there's candidates that make things happen. And there's a huge difference between the two. Oh, I got Donald Trump's endorsement. I'm all good. I'm going to kick back or here, I'm going to get out in front of people. I'm going to tell them why Donald Trump just endorsed me. And here's why. It's boom, 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 boom. So you either let things happen to you or you make things happen to your opponent. Maybe it's a better way to say it.
I got to bring this up because there were a lot of questions about it. And instead of just addressing them each, I'm going to wrap it all up into one. And somebody had just commented on it. It wasn't really a question, but Bill Barr out there trying to be Trump's AG again. Obviously, he smells which way the wind's blowing. But major defeat, Barnes and I have been trying to tell the system, not just people, the system itself, that the jurisdiction in D.C. is broken. It is not capable of doing its job just anymore. And I can prove it and have proven it if, judges who are willing to look at it. Hopefully we'll be able to do that soon. But Republicans need to really start thinking about creating a separate jurisdiction for politically related crimes and cases where, everybody wants to change a venue to Northern Virginia. That's not even good enough anymore. We need separate, almost nationwide jury selection process where it could be held maybe even remotely if need be, whatever it may be, even though I know a lot of lawyers have problems with that because they can't get the power of their arguments through a Zoom or remote. I get that, but we have to talk about this and we have to have a conversation because one side eventually, Don, is going to decide that the system no longer works for them. And that's when real political violence and upheaval begins. I mean, we are not going to escape that. That is the history of human civilization. And that is what will happen to us as well. Sussman was obviously guilty. They didn't even say he wasn't guilty. It was like, what's it called? Verdict. No contest or something. What's it called? Yeah. So, I mean, people are saying, asking a bunch of questions about Bill Barr and Sussman. What are your thoughts on this? Now Bill Barr drapes out and says that Durham has uncovered a criminal conspiracy to subvert the president. Okay. Oh, so why didn't you do anything about it when Donald Trump was still the president? They didn't need all of this time, Don. Everyone knew the facts. Mm-hmm. It's all true. It's all true.
Yeah.
As Scott Adams just tweeted. It was all true, folks.
Yeah. And we all know Sussman lied. I mean, it's not like that's debatable or there's anything about it. Let's just be honest about this. The biggest disappointment in Donald Trump is some of the positions that he picked. Look at the attorney general was a lost 4 years. I mean, you had Sessions, and that was just a massive disappointment. With Bill Barr, you kind of knew you were going to be disappointed. It was just a matter of how much. So I mean, let's be honest about it. That was the worst picks he made were the attorney general picks. I mean, obviously Mad Dog Mattis didn't help either, but we all know what happened in this Sussman thing. We all know exactly what happened. He lied to Kash Patel when Kash Patel was running that in.
That's
in
right.
fact, I've got Kash on tomorrow. We're going to talk about that. But
Excellent.
I mean, it's disappointing. It's frustrating, right? It frustrates the hell out of people. And I don't know. I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I gotta say, let's get into that because I know we're at the 2:06 mark, and I don't want to keep you too long, but also I know they're gonna need me soon. You got Kash Patel on tomorrow. That's gonna be super awesome after what happened. So why don't you give us a preview of what you got going on?
Well, of course, we've got you on. We'll talk about the latest, everything going on here. Exactly. We got Peter Hussey on national security. We've got Kash Patel on everything that's going on with the Sussman stuff. I mean, this is, he's pretty frustrated, right? This is a personal thing for him. He was personally vested and involved in all of this, and he was personally lied to by this guy. So nobody knows it better than Kash Patel. So we'll have Kash Patel on the program. Also, Rear Admiral retired Denny Wisely. Everybody's talking about Top Gun, the movie out there. This guy was Top Gun. He was a Top Gun instructor. He was the test pilot for the F-14, the F-4 program. He was the first guy to shoot down a MiG. He shot down 2 in one encounter, shot down several throughout the course of his career during Vietnam. Just an amazing guy, aircraft carrier. He was a commander of, and just incredible guy. So we'll talk to him too, and just a great guy. So looking forward to that. So yeah, we got a great show tomorrow, DonSmithShow.locals.com. Everybody check it out. And I'm looking forward to talking to Kash. And I know this is personal for him. We just talked to 3 weeks ago, and we were like, Kash, everybody wants some justice here. Everybody wants somebody held accountable for this stuff. And we were both together hoping that would be the case. And I know he's as disappointed as I am, and as disappointed as anybody else who's been paying attention to this.
Well, I do gotta run, but I'm definitely looking forward to that tomorrow, noon Eastern Standard Time, folks. The Don Smith Show, don't miss it. I'll be on there. Kash Patel, he's got a lot of cool stuff as always coming up. So noon Eastern Standard Time, don't miss it. Sign up on his Rumble, the Don Smith Show on Rumble. All right, and with that, my friend. And also right down there below him, DonSmithShow.locals.com. And Don, actually, after I get done here, I'll give you a buzz. I know we have to chat, and everybody's like seeing inside stuff for Rich and Don. No, we're making plans for coverage, and we have a lot of cool things to discuss. All right, so I'm gonna kick rocks. Give Brenda our love and our best as always. And,
love to Laura and the kids as always.
As always, my friend. And I'll see you later. I'll talk to you in a little bit.
Sounds good. Have a good one, everybody.
All the best, Don. DonSmithShow.locals.com, folks. And also, you got to watch it on Rumble. Don Smith Show on Rumble. All right? Because he is unfortunately the victim of digital fascism. All right? Which is what it is, without a doubt. All right? All right, so I do have to kick rocks here. So with that in mind, don't forget, follow me on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com. On Twitter at peoples_pundit, on the Twitter killer getter, where our audience has been fantastic. Big audience growth on Twitter at peoplespundit on Twitter. All right. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, share it far and wide. Subscribe if you don't subscribe already. Hit the notification bell, YouTube viewers. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. But Rumble, we would very much like you to sign up like you do for Don. On Rumble, the People's Pundit Rumble channel, and below and up to the top left, you will see my link for Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com. New form for the Big Data Poll Project is up. It's there. It's ready to go. So check it out. All of it is in the description below if you need it. But it's bigdatapoll.com/public polling project, which will redirect you on to where you need to go. And for the rest of you I don't see on tomorrow, which I better be nobody, we should see you. Have a great and safe weekend, and we will be back on Monday. All right, with more goodies and goodness. Locals, check out. I'm making a new cross tab. Keep an eye out for it. All right, it's real cool. All right, guys. See you soon. All the best. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers. Stay cool. And since Laura's not in shouting range, I'll do it for her. Deuces.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear for a night, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette.